Melanie Traylor. Today we are kicking off the Attic Window Quilt Along. This is our final quilt along of the year, and it's the very last quilt pattern in my book, A Life with Quilts. If you are just now hearing about this quilt along, the pattern is located in this book. You can find the book at meanderandmake.com. The book is called A Life with Quilts. Here is what Attic Window looks like. It is a 60 by 68 inch throw quilt. It's very beginner friendly, nothing but straight line sewing. We are going to have a very zen experience with this quilt. I am ready for a zen experience. This is week 1, and our task this week is to get our fabrics chosen, cut, and organized. And then ready, and we're basically getting everything ready for week 2, which is when we're going to start piecing these blocks together. We're just cutting fabric. We're choosing cutting fabric, and that's what we're going to do this week. If you are looking at page 45, you see the fabric requirements. You need 14 fat quarters for your foreground and 2 yards for your background. There's also another option. If you're looking at page 44, there is a by the block that you can use. I mean, it tells you every piece and size of each piece that you need if you wanted to like use your scraps and maybe make one block at a time and, you know, just use a whole bunch more fabrics than those 14. So that's an option for you if you are sitting on a basket of scraps. I know we all are, but if you are eager to use them, so you have options. So basically we're just getting everything. We're cutting all our fabric, and I know that that is quite a chore for so many quilters. So many quilters tell me how much they dislike cutting, but I like to think about it as this is what we have to get through to get to the piecing, which is a lot. I love making blocks come together. I mean, that is just the best part almost. But we do get to choose fabrics, and I love that part too. So yes, we have to cut the fabrics, but we get to choose them, which is fun, kind of moseying about in our fabric stash. So we have a fat quarter diagram to use as our cutting chart, and that's what we're going to do is cut each of these 14 fabrics that way, and then we'll get our background cut. I would definitely encourage you to break up background and foreground into multiple days, unless you just like standing at your table cutting fabric for hours. But I actually do like that. So just to be clear, I really do enjoy cutting fabric, but I hear all the time how people don't like it. But anyway, we're going to do it together. So let's talk about the fabrics. We are making tiny blocks, and those tiny blocks have tiny pieces. So this is a great moment to get out your solids, get out your tonals, your blenders, your tiny prints, because they are going to work the easiest for this quilt. I love big prints as much as the next person, but they're going to be a little bit harder to use. That being said, I'm using a few in my own quilt, so don't let that it's hard stop you from using them. You're just gonna have to just pick if it's a good print. Obviously, if you are using a white background, you want to avoid white fabrics as your foreground, because they kind of get lost. So if your big print has a whole bunch of white spots all over it, that could be an issue. If your big print is very saturated and you don't think it will matter much if something gets cut off, then I would say go for it. But that's kind of how I always choose. If I've got, it just really depends on the background, right? If I'm using that white background, I've got to be very careful about what foregrounds I use. I'm actually using a yellow background, so I obviously want to avoid yellow foreground. I've got one, but it's like almost orange, so we're not going to count that. Just in case you are unfamiliar with fabric terms, a blender would be like a fabric that is almost all green or almost all turquoise and have little tiny bits on it, but it's mostly the same color. So that's what I would call a blender. It kind of ties your busier prints together. What else did I say? A tonal is a color on a color, so it's basically a blender. So we know what solids are, and then tiny prints are just prints with very small designs on it. Let me give you an example. I would actually call this a blender, a tonal, and a tiny print, because those are really, really small designs. So that is going to work as all three in this quilt. Let me see if I got some other. Here's what I would consider like a big print. So I'm using these in my quilt. I think they're colorful enough to be okay, because there's a lot of different things going on, so I think they're actually going to work okay. I'm going to lose the pretty bouquets, but I think it'll still be pretty. Let's talk about like choosing fabrics based on color palettes. So I like to have my color palette pretty nailed out before I start choosing fabrics, unless you're going with a collection. Going with a collection or a bundle that's been curated is the easiest way, because there it is, right? But if you're kind of going through your stash, I like to start with the color palette, and I like to know what colors I'm going to use. Limiting your colors down to 1 or 2 colors and using different shades of those colors is, for me anyway, to choose fabrics. If I'm only using orange and yellow, then it's really easy for me to pick those fabrics based on that. If you are unsure about what you want your color palette to be, maybe choose one fabric that you love that is multicolored, and then from that fabric, pick fabrics based on the color that are in that print that you love so much. So if the print you're looking at is red, blue, and green, you could find red fabrics, blue fabrics, and then green fabrics to go with that, and they would all and that print with the multi-colors will tie all those together. So that if I'm ever unsure, which I rarely am because I'm like stuck on certain color palettes, but if I'm unsure and I have a print that I love, that's what I usually go and do. Lots of different ways to choose your color palette, to choose your fabrics. There's no wrong way. Use what makes you happy. Always use the fabrics that are making you the happiest, because quilt making is a long process, and you'll be happy all the way through it. I think I have talked about everything that we need to talk about, and now it's just time to do. So let's get our fabrics prepped and then cut. All right, so before we get started cutting, I'm just going to prep my fabrics, and I always starch and press my fabrics. The starch will keep your fabrics crisp. It's just easier to have accurate cuts, accurate piecing when your fabrics are a little bit stiffer than they come naturally. So I'm just going to run through these really quick, and I'm going to starch and press them. Okay, so I've pressed, I'm ready. Well, my foreground is at least. So what I'm going to do is get the foreground cut, and then I'll come back and I'll press my background and then cut it. I'm just going to break it up into stages so that I'm not standing at this cutting table or pressing mat for hours upon hours. So we will get these cut first. Okay, so I'm going to point them in this upright direction for my cutting. And I just like to take the selvage right here, and I like to get it pretty evened up with one of these lines on the cutting mat. Doesn't matter which one, just, you know, whatever's closest to you. And you want to have a little overlap on one of the vertical lines. So again, my cutting mat is vertical instead of horizontal right now. And I'm going to pile on 6 of these. So I'll cut 6 at the same time. I'm putting a little smidgen of them on the other side of one of these vertical lines to me, just so that I can get a good starting place and start at a straight edge. So you always want to make sure you do that. Actually, since we have 14 fabrics, I think I'm gonna go one more. 7 fabrics. So I have 7 layers going on here. A little bit more than I normally do, but I'm using a 60 millimeter rotary cutter, so I should be fine. I like the bigger rotary cutters because it means you can cut more fabric at once. Okay, so we're going to get our straight edge. So if you've never cut fabric before, I like to line up the lines of my ruler with the lines of my cutting mat. So, and you want to look, here's the edge of the, let me flip it around this way, it'll be easier to show you. Here's the edge of the ruler, right? You want to go 1 inch in. So I'm not looking here, I'm looking at the 1 inch line right here, right? And I'm going to put that 1 inch line 1 inch from where I want to cut. So I'm not looking on the mat, I'm not looking at the line I want to cut on, I'm looking at the line 1 inch away. So I line up that line of my ruler with the line of my mat. And then, I don't think I got this part down here. And then we get our straight edge to start from. Make sure I got that. It's a little far away from me. All right, so there is my straight edge. So now I can make my cuts that I need. So this is a fat quarter diagram, so it's really easy to cut fabric from, which is nicely. So you want to go ahead and you're starting at the top of your fat quarter or the top of the diagram, and you just make all those strip cuts first, and then I'm going to do that first, and then I will subcut them into the pieces I need. So I'm going to let you watch me do that really quick, and then we'll move on to subcutting. Our strips cut, and you're left with this tiny little bit here, so we don't need that. All right, and now we will subcut. I think I'll get out my stripology ruler. I like to use it these days for subcutting. So here's one single strip, here's that big one. So we will we will do the subcutting on this one. Let's see. Now, if you don't have this ruler, or don't even worry about that, you can use your basic ruler for this if you don't have this stripology ruler. I just like to use it because it makes everything move along a little bit faster. And the less time we have for cutting, the more time we have for sewing, right? So we're gonna cut those skinny strips now. All right, so we have. Okay, if you want to learn more about that stripology ruler, I'll put a link to that video wherever you're seeing this video. So this is extra scraps, and these pieces we're just going to, for now, just stack them up and move them out of the way. So I'm just going to put those over here. All right, and then we're going to do our next subcutting, and this time we got 4 strips the same size, so we're just going to cut all of these at one time. So let me just bring them down here so I can cut them, and I'm going to get my ruler back in place. All right, and then we will cut these. These are also cut into rectangles. So a very small amount of leftovers on these. And you should have made 4 cuts. So we will go ahead and move those to the side as well. All right, I think it's time for me to change my rotary blade because it's not cutting really well. All right, so we're just putting these to the side. Now we have a strip of just 1 to cut. So let's get this one ready to go. I'm going to change this blade before I cut the next set of fat quarters. All right, so again, putting that to the side, and then we have you should have 1 more strip to cut if you're cutting in real time with me. 1 more strip. Get this guy back on here. All right, so we're not using much of this strip. You should have 4 cuts this time. Oh my goodness, this is making me crazy. This is why I change rotary blades all the time. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna change my rotary, oh, and this is extra scraps. I'm gonna change my rotary blade, and then I'm gonna cut those other 7 fat quarters exactly the same way that we cut these 7. All right, so now we have all these pieces, and we want to go ahead and get these a little bit more organized by fabric and size. So each block has 1 of these squares here, and then it has 2 of everything else. So what I want to do is I want to just get all of this size and this fabric together, and then repeat that for all the rest of this. Everything except for these two. So I'm going to do that really quick. All right, I'm all organized by fabric and size. Okay, so what you should be looking at is that you have your very biggest rectangle, you have your very smallest rectangle, and then you have that middle size. And the middle size is twice as many as the other size. And then of course you've got your squares that are the very center of each of your blocks. We are going to organize these into little bits like this. This represents one block, and I've got these binder clips on them. If you don't have these, you can use a clothespin, or almost anything that that clips like this. So those little things that you use to hold paper, whatever you want to use. We have these in the shop, but use what you have. And this way, as we move along during this quilt along, and as we make blocks each week, let's say we're supposed to make 14 blocks next week, we'll just be able to grab 14 of these and get to sewing, and everything will be ready and organized, and we'll just move along. So it's a little bit more efficient doing it this way. Plus, it helps you make sure that you use your fabric in a way that is not only random, but also it makes sure that you don't end up with, short something. So you have just enough of every piece to make all of these 56 blocks that we're making. But if you used too much of one color, then you could end up with not enough of something. So it's just a really good idea to organize them right off the bat. All right, we're gonna start with the biggest size of rectangles first, and each of our blocks has 2 of these. So we're gonna put this in each stack that I'm making. It represents one block. So I'm just gonna go through just like this, and I'm laying these out. And this represents C fabric in your block. So 2 in each block. If you have your own way of doing this, use your own way. I'm just kind of showing mine. All right. I'm gonna get all of these laid out, and then I'm gonna show you when I'm done. So it's really hard because of table space to lay out all of your biggest rectangles in sets of 2, but try to do that, because if you don't, and because those middle sizes they're doubled up, you could really easily mix up how many is supposed to go and end up being a little short for your block. So it's a good idea just to lay them all out. So what we're going to do now is we're going to grab middle size, and each of these that represents a block, remember, like I told you, we're going to grab 2 of the middle size and put them on each stack. So for like these, I'm grabbing this right here, and I'm going to put 2 of each on each stack. And this, is the C fabric. If you're looking in your, if you're looking at your pattern, it's the C fabric. So this is like the round 2. So make sure that we're doing that. And this fabric, I'm going to put 2 of this one on there. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and finish this up on my own, and then I'll show it to you when I'm done. All right, so when you've got C fabrics on each block, you just want to go through and make sure you didn't miss it, because it's kind of hard to see. I tried to go like in an order so that I would make sure that I had the 2 smaller rectangles on top of all the bigger rectangles. But just take a second. Oh, see, I missed this one. All right, whoopsie. So just want to kind of make sure that you're catching that. It could get confusing when you start making blocks, or you got leftover pieces. So best to look now. So at this point, we should have all of C fabrics laid down, and we're going to move on to B. And we're still working with that middle size. And this time you want to put 2 of the middle size on each of these stacks, but you want to make sure that you put it in a different color or fabric than what's laying down currently. All right, so for like this one, I'm going to put 2 of these, and you don't have to put it all in one color. You can, mix it up. So 2 here, and we're going to use all of these. So just kind of lay them where you think you might want them. And I'm just going to grab up these remaining middle sizes and I'm just going to kind of put them here and there. And putting them here and there will kind of make your quilt a little bit more random so that all the blocks look a little different instead of anything being the same. So we're going to go through real quick. Or not real quick, it actually takes a lot of time. And it may seem a little fussy, but it is really going to help us out when we get to making our block. Okay, all right, so I finished the first two pieces in my B. And now you just want to double check again and you want to make sure that you've laid down another two pieces. And the way, if you're following along and doing it exactly the way I'm doing it, the way I'm keeping up with what I have laid down and what I haven't is that here's the longer piece and here's the shorter piece, and they're two different colors. So that means that I've got half of my B fabrics on here and then I've got my C fabrics. So if you see one that's a different color, then you've forgotten to put that. But they actually work out where it's the fat quarters and everything you've cut, you're using every single piece. There are no extra. So you should be left with no more of that middle size rectangle. And we're gonna move on to small. And this time it's a little bit simpler too, because we're just grabbing the stack. And then we want this very smallest size, you wanna make sure that you're putting 2 down on each of these stacks in the exact same color as the one on top of it. All right, so I'm over here on this one. I'm putting 2 of these down right here. So I'm just going to use the whole stack up and just make sure that I've got these all laid down. Let me find where this fabric goes. Way up here, 1 and 2. All right, so that's that. Then just grab your next stack of small squares and do the exact same thing. I'm going to work through this on my own and I'll show it to you when I'm done. Here we are again. And if you're sitting with 0 of your smallest size rectangles left, then you know, you don't have to check these at all because you've got it going on. You've finished it. There's no leftover pieces. We have exactly enough. Now, if you find that you are missing something, you've either made a mistake in this layout here, or you've not cut enough, or you've cut too many of something. So that could be something that could happen. So if that was me and I'm finding it that I've got some leftovers or I've not got enough, I would sit here and check each one of these units, make sure that all of my pieces are in them. At this point, you should have 8 pieces of fabric laid out right here. And we haven't put this we haven't put the middle squares on there yet. But if you find that anything's wrong, I would start with counting these stacks and make sure you have 8 pieces. If you find that you do, I would go back and cut some more of that fat quarter. It means you've miscut somewhere along in this. All right, but if you're with me and you're looking good, you want to grab that middle square. It's the only piece that we cut that is square so far. And we're just going to start stacking these. We want 1 per unit. So I'm just going to kind of put these in little places until I have 1 on each of them. You can be as random with this as you want to be. So I'm going to work my way through this really fast and I'm going to show it to you when I have it all done. All right, and you should be left with 0 pieces. So that is that. I wouldn't worry about being particular in this step because it doesn't matter where you put it, because everything is going to end up touching everything anyway. So as long as your fabric looks good together when you first started, I wouldn't worry about this going here, this going here, unless maybe you're using 2 very similar colors or in the quilt, then maybe you wouldn't want those touching. But if you're using a good variety, then you should be good to go. All right, so we have got everything organized and we're just going to start clipping these just like this. And like I said, I'm using these binder clips, but use what you have, or if you want if you want binder clips, we have them available at Meander and Make. I use them for almost every single quilt, and I do use them for every single quilt because I bind with them. But I also, any quilt that I have to organize this way, I also use them for this process. I've probably bought so many packs of them. But go through, work yourself through this. I'm gonna get this done, and then we will move on to background. All right, so I'm not going to film me cutting the background. I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm just gonna walk through starching it, and then I will cut my strips, and then I will subcut those strips into the sizes we need. I believe, I'm not looking at my pattern, but I believe that there are 3 different size squares that we're cutting. So I'm gonna get that done, and then I'll show it to you when I have it. All right, so we end up with 3 different sizes. We've got that big stack of the smallest size, a medium stack of the middle size, and then we have 2 of that really small size. So that is our background. And after you cut all the strips, you had this little piece left. So what is it? Measure twice, cut once, because you have only got about 4-inch strip of background left over. So we use almost all of it. Just something to keep in mind. And that means we are done. So I'm just gonna get organized here. I'm ready to go for next Wednesday. So next Wednesday, we will tackle our blocks. And I am very excited. These are gonna be really, really cute blocks, and I can't wait. This is one of my favorite quilts in the book. So that's it for cutting. We are done. Cutting complete. I definitely want to encourage you to break that cutting up into a few days. Have a whole week to complete this task. There's no need to rush or do it all in one day. Take your time and do what's right for you. But I am ready to start piecing next Wednesday, and I can't wait to start doing that. Don't forget to post your progress on Instagram using the hashtag Attic Window QAL. This is how to enter the giveaways. So I will be choosing a giveaway winner next Tuesday, and it will be announced on Instagram. You do need to be following our lovely sponsors to be able to win. And you can find the list of sponsors and how to follow them. You can find all that information in the post that accommodates this video, or the email that accommodates this video. If you're watching this video on YouTube or somewhere else, there is a link to the post in the caption. You can also use that hashtag to connect with other participants. So everybody using that hashtag is making this quilt, and you can like their post, comment on their post, and make friends. And that is the beauty of Quilt Alongs. We're all making this together, and it's a wonderful experience to connect. Every single quilt along we do together, I enjoy that part of it so much. It's just a great part, and it feels like we're really together sometimes. All right, I will see you next Wednesday. Have fun cutting your fabrics. I can't wait to see what fabrics you're using.